This is a video titled, put up by 60 Minutes, Ricky Gervais' funniest ever interview, 60 Minutes Australia. Now, the fact that it's on 60 Minutes Australia means there is something sinister in here. And look, there was. Because 60 Minutes is run by Channel 9 in Australia, and they're owned by Goldman Sachs. And these entertainers, look, he's had a very successful career. And no doubt he is funny. He's a funny guy. But if he had views that were counter to the psychopaths, the bankers, he would not have a career. They control who goes on TV, who gets shows, who gets promoted, and it wouldn't matter how funny he was. So not only does he not have to have views that conflict with theirs, he needs to promote their views from time to time. Now, one of the goals of the psychopathic bankers is to destroy religion, or Christianity in particular, because a secular Christian society will be very successful, sitting on resources. A nation with those types of laws that come from Christianity, thou shalt not kill, thou shalt not steal, thou shalt not commit adultery, all those moral laws with some structure will produce very strong nations, educated nations, and they don't want that at all. So one of the pillars that they're trying to destroy is Christianity, and look, they're being very successful at it. Just look at Pell, either he's a plant or they're seized upon his weaknesses, but that's being promoted way throughout the courts, throughout the media. But they're after Christianity, and that's what Ricky Gervais is called upon to do here. Now, the whole of the interview goes for a while there. What is it, 15 minutes? But this part that I'm about to show, this was his scripted that he had to say, and it's just a story. And look, you can tell that he's lying because he looks away, and I'll get to that in a minute. So, yeah, the fact that he's on 60 Minutes, there's something sinister, and this is it. So let's get into it.
I've been an atheist since I was about 8 or 9.
So Ricky, right off the bat in this part of the interview, declares that he's an atheist, and it has been since he was 8 or 9, because even an 8 or 9-year-old knows that you should be an atheist.
What was the moment that made you into an atheist?
So how does Wooly know that there was a moment that Ricky Gervais became an atheist? Because he said it was around 8 or 9. I mean, it's a couple of years, not exactly a moment. And was it gradual, or, did he think about it for some time? No, he specifically said what was the moment. That's because this moment that Ricky's about to talk about, it's all scripted. I'm not sure if he's given this particular part of this script, read it on other news stations or talk shows, but he's certainly going to read it on this one. And it's all made up. It's all scripted.
I love Jesus. I love the idea of,
So he's just mentioned Jesus Christ, so we know he's talking about Christianity, because this is an attack on Christianity. So at 8 or 9, he was a Christian, then he went away from Christianity to atheism. Now, look at him, look where his eyes are. He's reading a script. That's because it's all scripted, and it's not his words. He's been told to say these things.
I love the idea of Jesus because he was like a superhero. The God bit wasn't so special to me, but I love Jesus because he was kind, and I read the stories in the New Testament about I thought it was brilliant.
Now, Ricky Gervais is 57 years old, and he said this happened when he was 8 or 9. Now, can any 57-year-old remember in depth their thought processes right down to the detail that happened 50 years ago when they were 8 or 9, considering all the things that have happened in their lives? Look, maybe he's just got a good memory. But you can tell he's reading the script because he's looking at that place that I just met, that I showed before, and I'll just replay part of that and just watch where his eyes go. So you can see here that his eyes are darting around as he's reading the screen or the teleprompter. And he said in that piece that, the God thing I wasn't interested in. I didn't worry about God. Didn't worry about creation and how he came to be, or all those sort of things that help people decide whether they're going to be religious or not. Any of the religions, not just Christianity. But all he was interested in was the stories of Jesus and how he liked Jesus, and he built Jesus up. So let's just see what happened. And also, so he's still an atheist today, 50 years later. So he hasn't ever gone back to look at creation, look at the intelligent design of the universe, and had any more thought about it. No. Looks like he's just made his mind up 50 years ago, and he's never revisited it since. He just thought his 8-year-old self had all the wisdom and knowledge that he needed to make that decision, and he's not going back there. So you can see how this is very much scripted.
Brilliant bloke. That's the way to be. Be like Jesus, And I remember I was doing the Bible studies and stuff, and
This is funniest interview ever, but not for the reasons 60 Minutes thinks it's funny. It's funny because he's now lying. He's looked down, he lowered his voice, and he talked about Bible studies. Well, he's normally only study the Bible either at school or maybe in a church, but he's about to find out he's studying at home because his brother comes in and his mother's there. So he must have been, very devout to want to do his Bible studies. Like, who told him to do the Bible studies? His mum? Was he doing homework? Don't know, but it seems like he was to do it in the home, outside of church and school. Seems like he was very, very religious.
Brother Bob came in, who was 11 years older than me, so he was about 19, and he just went, why do you believe in God?
For 50 years ago, his memory of the detail is quite remarkable, but look, it was a big, profound moment for him. He was 8 years old and he decided he was no longer going to be a Christian. He was going to be an atheist. So his brothers walked in and asked him, why do you believe in God? Now, he just mentioned before I wasn't that interested in God, but anyway, the God side of it, but now he is, and he's looking at this question. Now, he makes out like the question was, you shouldn't believe in God. That's why I'm asking you, when really, why do you believe in God could come from a pastor or a religious person just wanting to reaffirm, how you come to the decision. But no, he sets it up like, it's a challenge to him that he shouldn't believe in God.
And my mum went, Bob, and I knew she was trying to shut him up. And and that was all that happened.
So from what he just said, it's implied that Bob isn't religious, and his mother knows that. And she's gone, Bob. And he said, that's all that happened. Now, obviously, his mother doesn't want Bob to influence Ricky away from religion. So she's obviously religious herself. So she believes it. So all you've got is Bob, who doesn't believe in religion, and his mother, who does.
And I thought about it. I thought, oh, no, of course there isn't. Of course there isn't. And I was always into science and nature. And I thought, yeah, it doesn't make sense, does it?
So he goes from doing Bible studies at home. There he is in the home, obviously with a Bible open, and he's studying it. He goes from that to, oh, of course there isn't. Of course there's not a God. Just based off his mum, who's religious, doesn't want his older brother to interrupt his Bible studies by... And there was no, apparently, like he remembers this in detail, his mum that was it. She didn't give there wasn't any debate between the mum and Bob, and, that he heard or anything, and he just made up his mind straight then and there that, and then he mentions, oh, but, I'm into science and nature. Well, he isn't into nature, and most people are into science. He's not special for that. But he's implying there that science and nature contradicts God. Well, according to, religious people, it's God created all of nature and the science because he's super intelligent. And when you look at the cosmological constant, Google that, and the Fibonacci spirals and all of these indicators that the universe is intelligently designed, then that's something he's not worried about considering. He just says no, it's against it when it's not. Now, of course, when it comes down to the he doesn't talk about his thoughts on how we all came here. And you've got the atheist. He's now an atheist, so he believes in the Big Bang miracle. And now I call it the Big Bang miracle. They call it the Big Bang theory. Now, you need to have a theory of something. So you've got the theory of evolution, or the theory of whatever before they discovered, say, thermodynamics. A theory of. So there's always a theory, but it's of something. Whereas atheists go, oh, it's just a Big Bang theory. Yeah, a theory of what? Well, their theory is that it was one big miracle. So, that's one thing I don't like about atheists, is that they say there is no miracles, there is no God, everything's just one big accident. And we just go up to the point where it's only a Big Bang theory. Well, hang on, what about one step backwards to what this theory is about? And basically, atheists believe that it's a miracle.
Doesn't make sense. And, I understand why. At the time it seems like a good lie,
this may be the first time that he's told this pork pie, because he doesn't seem to know it very well. If you just go back and watch that little bit again, his eyes are darting around. He's definitely reading a script. If it was real, he would just remember it organically, but it's not real. He wasn't doing Bible studies. Bob didn't come in and come in to say something to him, and his mum didn't interrupt him. And that's all a lie. But what he's saying is that Jesus is a lie based on he's made that decision at 8 or 9 years old, not revisited, of this made-up story that he's telling everybody. So, he's really disgracing himself here, Ricky Gervais, and he's really, really exposing himself for the, I guess, paid-for puppet. Look, he wouldn't have a career if he didn't do this stuff. Charles Woolley's there, he works for Goldman Sachs, and Ricky's been brought on. He did all that funny stuff, but this was the actual hit piece that he was meant to deliver.
For a working-class mum, Jesus is an unpaid babysitter.
So now this banker, psychopath, paid-for entertainer is reducing Jesus to an unpaid babysitter, bearing in mind that there is plenty of texts that prove Jesus, or indicate, gives evidence that he was in existence and that he had his preachings and that he did what he did. Both Islam and Judaism, as well as Christianity, they all refer to Jesus. But apparently, according to Ricky, he's reduced to an unpaid babysitter.
If I'm not watching you, someone is. They do it for good reason. I think, and religion's greatest trick wasn't making people believe there was a God. It was telling you shouldn't ever ridicule the idea.
Okay, so what he said there was just utterly ridiculous. I mean, he's saying that it was religion's greatest trick. Now, bear in mind, he's talking about Christianity here because he hasn't mentioned any other religion since he mentioned Jesus, so that's what this story is about. And he says that it's a trick that the believers don't want their beliefs ridiculed. Well, that's not a trick. That's just natural. Of course they wouldn't want it ridiculed.
That it was sacred to question this dogma, and of course it's not. And as both a scientist, a bit of a philosopher, and a professional comedian.
Well, his resume is correct on 2 out of the 3. Because if you read that highlighted bit, unless he believes that studying biology for 2 weeks makes him a scientist, then he's telling a lie.
That is so important to me, that nothing's sacred.
Well, when nothing's sacred, you don't really have a commitment to anything really, and you can have a contradiction like this. If you read that top highlighted bit, he said he didn't get married because there is no God. But then he says, contradicting that, he's a staunch supporter of gay rights and praised the introduction of same-sex marriage. Well, if there's no God, why would he praise the introduction of same-sex marriage? He's not getting married. Why would he care if anyone else had the right to get married?
Nothing should be beyond a joke.
Well, there's no subject you shouldn't joke about, but it depends on the target. People get offended when they mistake the subject of a joke with the actual target, and they're not necessarily the same. You can do a joke about race without being racist, but people hear the subject come up and they go, oh, no, that's not allowed, that's taboo. And I deal in taboo subjects for that reason, because I want to take the audience to a place it hasn't been before. When I start a routine, I can feel the tension, and then I come down on the right side.
Oh, so Ricky declares that he knows what the right side is. Apparently Jesus doesn't. He's just a babysitter for working class mums. But so where does he get his compass from? And, he calls the fact that existence of Jesus and God is a lie. He calls that a lie. Well, he can't prove that at all. Nobody could prove it. No one's proved that there isn't a God or that Jesus wasn't who he said he was. And Jesus, as I said before, he was in existence. So, at least we know that. But so he's had a deception there that Jesus is only a babysitter for working class mums. But also he lied in this. He called himself a scientist. Of 2 weeks of studying biology, he said, I'm a scientist. He didn't put any qualifiers. You assume that he's got a science degree. So obviously telling lies of fact to make a point, not calling something that hasn't been resolved, which is the existence of God, that's just a belief. This is a point of fact that he's not a scientist, and he said that he was. So obviously lying is falling on the right side, according to Ricky. When you have a bit of a look at this guy, he's funny, and he's got a really successful career thanks to his psychopathic banker mates while he's, keeps doing these types of interviews. But, he's, I'm just not impressed with Ricky Gervais after watching this and reading a bit more about him. Sure, he's funny, but there's more to life than being funny, Ricky.